in it, and just to make it smooth the first time. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, does it say recording? Can you see Meher?
Yes.
Okay, yep, it's recording.
Okay, hello everyone. Uh, so welcome to our session of this life skills group in partnership with Crisis Connections. Um, we're so grateful to Crisis Connections for helping with this effort as well. So as you know, we've been running our uh, other life skills group for we've been running our life skills group for about a year now, and we really want to help expand our reach and uh, help give kids a safe space to talk and share their ideas, especially in the stressful time. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Meher. So I'm Melissa, and I'm here presenting today again, talking to you all about um, being supportive to youth. So a lot of my discussion is going to be directed towards parents, but of course, youth are our intended audience, and what works well for parents is also going to work well for the kids that they have. We have some questions potentially that we'll get to today that came from some of the teens from Meher's group. And then other stuff we will just come up with as we go. Participants are welcome to join in and ask questions. It makes it more interesting. We will be here today until about 4:45. And so I will be open to having a discussion today. So last week we talked, or 2 weeks ago, sorry, we talked about how to create an environment that youth can then communicate with their parents. So we talked about the importance of creating an environment where parents can hear what their youth have to say. So hearing is the first step, right? Inviting our youth to talk to us about all kinds of topics and having a close relationship with them will, of course, make it easier to talk to them when it comes to having difficult conversations. And that's what our topic is about, how to have difficult conversations with youth. So the first step is to be able to listen. And this is going to be, I'm going to expand on this a little more today on how to do that. And listening skills, we're going to go over probably next week, maybe a little bit more today. And then we'll get to understanding also as we go. So that was a little bit of review from last time. And then now we're going to move on to some of the reasons why those roadblocks to communication that we talked about last time are not conducive to having conversations with youth. Okay, so all youth need to feel connected to their families, right? That's how we build love and family interconnection, how we have security and stability, how parents can protect their children, and also how children can grow and develop to become beautiful and amazing young adults and have their own families. So parents, I know that that is your main goal for having children, is to have a loving family and also to create amazing adults and children, which we met a lot of them last week. So the sense of belonging and love is a basic need that all human beings have. So when we were talking a little bit last week about those barriers to communication, these are kind of some of the categories that they end up falling into. So for example, when we dismiss something that our children say to us, or youth out there, when you feel like what you say gets dismissed because the parents say, oh, that's not important, or oh, that's not how you really feel, or maybe they want to tell you, oh, it's going to be okay in the end, it's something like that, that is a really dismissive, and it makes you feel like communicating less. So it ends up becoming a spiral of miscommunication, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. Another concern that can come up is a roadblock to communication is when we feel ignored. So sometimes youth are reaching out to us and we feel like the parents are not listening, okay? They're ignoring us. Maybe they're just too busy, they're not being attentive, they're listening, or they're looking at their cell phones or doing too many other tasks. And as youth are trying to communicate to their parents, trying to say, hey, this is important to me, maybe they feel ignored. So ignoring youth is another roadblock to communication. Another thing that can happen with parents and youth is parents who have a lot of life experience, who have that advice they could offer or things that they can share with their youth, are trying to listen and trying to create an environment where youth are able to be listened to, yet they jump right into trying to explain to youth why not to have that perspective, why giving advice or things like that. So that's something else that's a roadblock to communication. And then giving in, right? So if youth are challenging us or pushing us or testing boundaries, which is something that kids are supposed to be doing, sometimes we're giving in and we're just conceding to their requests or their demands, et cetera, et cetera. And what ends up happening is that's a roadblock to communication too, because we're not creating an environment where they can communicate with us and where we can communicate our expectations, our desires for them. So we're just giving in, kind of not having a conducive environment. So this is what I wanted to talk about today mainly, is how can we start with that environment that youth can and kids can hear what we have to say, and also where we can hear what they have to say. So how to be a trusted adult, okay? In order to build trust, what's really important is to be consistent. Consistency is what then becomes predictability. Now, of course, we're human beings, we're not robots or machines, and that wouldn't be very interesting anyway. However, we want to make sure as parents that our values and our words and our actions and our behaviors are all in alignment with each other, that we can be seen as being consistent. So sometimes the way that looks is if we tell kids to do something with our mouth, but with our behaviors, we do something totally contradicts what we just said, okay? Classic one is smack, don't hit your sister, something like that, right? That is like the behavior and the words are in opposition to each other, the exact opposites. The kid is gonna see, okay, hitting is okay, as long as what, you're the parent, you're the bigger one, you don't get caught or something like that. Whereas the words say, don't do this, I don't value hitting. So we want to make sure that we are being consistent with youth so that they can feel that security, that stability, that protection, right? So being predictable is something that will help, especially when a family is struggling or is in crisis, right? So if somebody is having, a tantrum or an argument, if we behave unpredictably, that is going to be more stressful and will escalate what the other person is going through. So these are some things that are really important concepts to think about when we think about our parenting style, okay? Something else that's really important as parents that we can do is we can be inclusive. Now, does this mean that children should be the bosses of the house? No, that's the job of the parents, right? However, sometimes as adults, we can forget to include the perspective of children. We can forget to include their ideas when it comes to even their own punishment, right? Or consequences that they might have to do. So I want to talk a little bit about being inclusive is creating that environment where we can hear them, maybe sitting down, creating time for that, and also listening to them. So we actually have to hear them and not do that advising, not do that other ignoring part. So we just want to put that out there, right? And then teamwork. Okay, so inclusivity will lead to teamwork. And where is the foundation of the teamwork going to come from? That foundation is going to come from the parents themselves or the guardians, right? Whoever is in the household, that's the adult, we need to make sure that they're on the same page too. If not, it's very easy for things to become inconsistent, unpredictable, non-inclusive, and insecure, right? Because children can tell when the guardians or parents are not on the same team. So sometimes that means that communication part is also going to have to come from between the parents and guardians as well. So I wanted to say, I'd like to open it up if Dr. Chopra wanted to jump in and chat about this, or if any of the other parents had some questions around that, or what does that mean? Things I've been talking about. Okay. I can move on then. All right. So, oh yeah, I didn't want to get to the questions yet. So I wanted to talk a little bit about different kinds of things that are going to be blocking. So we were looking at the handout last time, which we can make available as a PDF. I sent it out last time and we can have it again. So we can talk a little bit about roadblocks to communication. So we had some examples from last time and I wanted to go into that a little bit more. So we have blaming and accusing, right? Feeling defensive when we're talking with our children, okay? So how can we counteract that? So that's what we didn't talk about last time. How can we not be as defensive or as accusatory, right? So here's a simple solution to that. We want to talk about giving information in a neutral way. So for example, we have an expectation around chores, doing dishes, okay? So instead of talking to our youth, right, and talking to our kids and saying, hey, you're so lazy, you never do the dishes when you're supposed to, you told me that you're going to do this as a chore, and yet you're not ever doing it, okay? So that would be more like blaming and accusing, which causes the youth to feel defensive, okay? This is a good example for me because this is what it was like when I was young. One of my chores was to do the dishes. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm getting ready to do the dishes. And then my mom would say, you never do the dishes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was just about to go do the dishes. How annoying that she just yelled at me about it. Did I then rush off to please her? Not me. No, I was a little too rebellious for that. So I instead got defensive. How can you say that? And then we started having an argument, right? So the tips that I want to give you today for parenting is give information in a neutral way. Keep it simple, keep it respectful. That way, instead of feeling defensive, it allows them to assume some responsibility for what they're supposed to do, right? When we argue with them about it and we cause that defensiveness, we're preventing them from doing it on their own. Just like I was saying, maybe 5 more minutes later, I would have gone and done the dishes on my own. That is really what I want to do. I want to become an autonomous, productive individual. So how can my parents support me in that? one way they can do it is not just ignore it at all or give in, because yeah, of course the dishes might not get done, but doing it in a neutral, simple way. Even just saying one word, dishes, then the youth remembers, oh yeah, I gotta do the dishes. I was thinking about my friends. I was thinking about this video game. I was reading this book, etc., etc. So keeping the information really simple, maybe just one word, maybe one sentence, and really neutral. Okay, so that's one communication tip that we're giving. So we had a question in the chat about what are some good tips for communication, or what are some tips for communication? So that's one, right? Instead of blaming and accusing youth, we give information in a neutral, simple, and respectful way. Another question from the chat is, how can we try to avoid arguments? Again, one good way. So as a parent, we have a lot of control actually over how much arguing we have with our kids. It might feel like, are the kids arguing with us? Yes, they are, but we don't necessarily see the role that we play. Here's my advice to parents. You're the adult. You're the one that has more maturity, more life experience. So yeah, it is up to you to be the one that is going to argue less, going to create less argumentative situations, okay? So one of those can be, again, giving information in a neutral way, keeping it simple, and trying to think about how can it be respectful. What do I mean by respectful? A lot of times that's tone, facial expression, right? I can say the same thing like, dishes, and that means something totally different from something really neutral, which is dishes, or do the dishes is maybe a little too bossy, but keeping it simple and respectful just as a little reminder, okay? So the next one I wanted to talk about is a roadblock to communication is when we threaten children, okay? We threaten them with, if you don't do this, then you're going to get grounded. Then you can't have dessert, da 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 da, right? So threats, when we threaten people, I don't know how you feel when somebody threatens you, that what we usually get back from youth is, again, that kind of defiance, some maybe they comply, but they're really sullen or pouty about it, right? Or maybe they're saying they'll be compliant. Yes, mommy. Yes, daddy. And then they don't do it, right? So what we want to talk about for that, instead of threatening, right, is offer more limited choices, right? Or substitute a choice that will meet the needs of the youth, okay? So I like to use this one a lot. Instead of threatening them with consequence if they don't do something, I put it out as a presupposition, as a potential, okay? So I might say something along the lines of, so, you know, it seems like there's a lot going on over here. You're not really getting your homework done. Do you think that doing your homework in a quieter place might be helpful? So I frame it more as a question, and then they can say, you know, doing my homework somewhere quiet would be really helpful. It gives them that opportunity to almost think that it's their idea. It's not manipulative, but it's putting it in a way that makes it easier to have the option to do it. If we pose it as a threat or a command, if we say, do this or else, or do this because I said so, then that makes all human beings want to be kind of defiant or to do it to comply, but only kind of like a fake or a sullen compliance, right? So instead, kind of framing it in a way that allows them the choice to come up with another solution because you framed it as a question, it's a little bit softer, right? It allows them, again, that autonomy and that ability to make that decision for themselves instead of telling them what to do. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up soon, but I wanted to take one more question which came in on the chat from do we have any tips for kids feeling frustrated about COVID? Okay, so if we have noticed that our kids are feeling really frustrated about COVID, lockdowns, situations, things like that, what can we do? One thing I want to talk about is go back to the basic principles I'm trying to cover, which is let's create an environment where you can hear all the reasons why they're frustrated. What's really amazing is how intelligent children are, how smart they really are. And isn't that what you want to encourage in your child, right? So if we're always giving them the answer, that creates a dependency on our expertise, on our life experience as parents. And what we're trying to do is help create those autonomous young people who turn into independent, autonomous young adults that are part of the family, that are still connected to us and still want to have good relationships with us. What we want to avoid is kids that are with us because that's the expectation in the culture, in the family, or in the environment, but they want to be with us, right? That we're enjoying each other's company. So again, when we want to talk to kids about something that's a difficult conversation, such as COVID or frustration, we can invite them to say, hey, I'd like to hear what's really frustrating to you, and simply listen. We're not going to solve that. One tip that I really like to share with parents is when we're listening, to really hold back from trying to fix things or advise it, and maybe just respond with a word or a body gesture that lets them know you're hearing it and you can really feel that, right? So maybe we can just even say the phrase, or I see, or I hear you, or is that so? Keeping it really simple and allowing the kids to just really get things off their chest. And someone said, in the chat, what should we avoid saying about this type of thing is we don't want to tell them it's going to be better soon, because we can't promise that, right? In our life, as we're older, 2 weeks, 2 months, 1 year is just a small fraction of our life. Whereas for a young person, it's a much bigger part of their life. So we don't want to dismiss those feelings. We don't want to tell them, oh, just, don't be frustrated. That frustration is where they're at right now. So we just want to validate that and let them have those feelings. So as humans naturally get that chance to really feel heard and listened to, what ends up happening is they generate their own solution. They will come up with what they could do themselves to manage that. And that's really what a parent's responsibility is, to help a child learn how to soothe themselves, calm themselves, and solve their own problems, right? And you can create a really loving, supportive family environment where that is what happens simply by stepping back a little bit, by listening a lot more, talking a lot less, and seeing what comes up, what comes out of these mouths of these beautiful creatures that you have created, that have been watching you and learning from you since the day they were born. Okay. Last time I talked about how important it was to always model good values, because they're going to naturally absorb those as they're growing up, even before they're pre-verbal. So by the time a child is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they're going to be able to tell us and show us what our values are by behaving that way. Okay, so I see more questions coming in. And I see a question from Anita, so she can jump on if she wants and talk to me a little bit more about what her question is. And then we can wrap it up for today. I could talk a lot longer. I love this topic, and we have more questions coming in, which I will save them for next time.
So my question is, Melissa.
Yes.
When the kids are frustrated and they are They are saying, oh, we are fed up of the pandemic. It's never going to end. It's doomsday. Things are never going to be the same again. And we try and listen to them, or say, take a back seat and say, okay, how are you feeling? Sometimes that actually infuriates them more. What should we do then? If it is they are seeking answers, we are not giving it to them, and they are actually more frustrated, and it leads to a spiraling down of emotions. What should we do then? Please give us some examples of a conversation that a parent may have with their children in a situation
Okay.
like this, when nothing is in their control.
Yes. So don't mute yourself, Anita. We're coming back. I'm going to have you role play a little bit with me, okay? But what we want to consider is this. You've been invited finally to give your 2 cents, to give advice. That's what you're saying to me, Anita, is that your youth has talked to you and asked you about it, and then is getting frustrated because you aren't answering, right?
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so we don't give advice that is unsolicited, that nobody asks for, which is what parents do most of the time, I'm going to have to say, right? It's like the kid states what the problem is, and then the parent comes up with a solution. Well, nobody asked you for your advice, okay? However, when a youth does say, how can I do this? Tell me, mom, right? Help me with this. Then you could say, well, let's talk about that point what I mentioned before, which is like inclusiveness. We can say, let's come up with some solutions together, right? I love a good brainstorm. So that's where I would probably go myself. I would say, let's brainstorm all of the things that we find really challenging right now. Let's just list them all. And then once we have a good sense of that, then let's come up with ideas, even crazy ideas. We're not going to cross anything off. We're not going to say something out loud and then take it back. We're just going to put everything on there. You know, maybe it's like dress up like clowns on Thursdays, or, you know what I mean? Like just wild ideas. And then that way you're role modeling how to solve a problem, but you're also participating, right? You're giving the youth what they wanted, which is what they asked for, which is your advice. At the same time, you're drawing it out of them how to also solve that problem, because problem solving is a huge life skill that youth are, gonna need to develop, right? You don't want them calling you when you're 60 years old, 70 years old, being like, Mom, how do I solve this problem? Does that help, Anita?
That's true. Yes, that's true. So let's imagine this conversation where youth is coming up to me and saying, I'm so disappointed. I'm so sad with this pandemic. I'm fed up of being indoors. Everything is going wrong, one after the other. I have learned to not expect anything good out of this year. I have learned that things are going to go downhill. Everything is going to go wrong in life. And with the pandemic is making things so difficult. I don't see any ray of light. So I say, okay. So then then they say, you don't understand, things are awful for me, no adults understand, teachers don't understand, you get to go to work, I'm staying home. You are going to work, you are interacting with people, I'm not. You don't understand, the teachers don't understand how we feel. It's very hard for me. And then so far there has been no question about what should be the parent's role, right? So far it has just been venting. This is what I'm feeling, this is what. And then I say, okay, it's very hard. I know, I understand it's really hard for you. It's all.
Okay, let's pause right there. Right there. So when we say, I understand, those are words. We haven't shown that we understand. So the first step is to show that we understand. So we can use our words to do that, but we need to show that first. Okay. So we can pick out something that maybe seemed like a really important point. I mean, what you just told me, man, that's a ton of information. And there's so many different ways that I could respond to that, right? But what I'm going to do is like select one of those ways. Okay. So to me, when I'm hearing what this youth is saying to you, one of the big points is that they feel like they don't get enough opportunity to connect with others.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to take that, even though they said a bunch of other stuff, I'm going to try to find the one that I think is maybe the most important. And I'm going to just kind of reflect that or feed that back to them to show them that I understand. And I would say, oh, you know, like, I can't imagine how hard it must be to not have socializing and to not feel like you have enough friends or something along those lines. You see what I mean? And then they'll run with that. They'll either say, Mom, you don't get it. And then they'll tell you, this is what's really bothering me. Or they'll say, yeah, I mean, you get to meet with other people, you're interacting with them, and I'm just here. I'm here in the house because I go to school in the house. I live in the house. My bedroom is the only place I can go where I can like just not be around you guys. This is making me crazy.
Exactly. So then I say, okay, you know, like you said, that the pick up one point and really show your understanding of this. But the next thing is, then the next thing they say is, okay, you cannot imagine, the teachers are not understanding, there is no way out, there is no ray of light that I'm seeing in this situation, and you are not helping me. So then there is the question, right? Seeking help from me, is that right?
It could be. So here's one thing that I would like to say. When someone or youth or kids approach us and they're giving us a question that's like basically huge, almost existential, right? Like
Yes.
it's about the existence of life. Okay. That's kind of a big topic and we'll never be able to solve it. Even if we had a magic wand, which is one little technique, you know, that we could use. If I had a magic wand, sweetie, I would change all of this for you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the magic wand is a great little skill. Okay. And so we can't solve these huge existential issues though. Okay. Really the same things that I was saying before. The kid is going to have to, because I don't know this kid at all, they're going to have to come up with their own ideas, but they're not ready yet because they're still in that emotional stage. Okay. So I want to take that big topic and I want to narrow it down. Okay. What could your teachers have done today to show you that they understand what you're going through? Or what could I do today to show you that I understand what you're going through? Or what could we do right now that could help you alleviate some of that? So instead of making it like huge,
Yes.
this huge topic, let's try to bring it down to right now in this hour. Okay.
That's
so that
wonderful.
it becomes manageable.
Yes. I think though that's fantastic advice, Melissa. The three, I think you gave us three very big pointers on how to handle such a conversation. It is indeed a difficult conversation with the youth, and I think that these pointers really help. And I think let's keep working on these pointers in our future conversations.
Yes, that's what we're here for. Thanks, Anita, for jumping on and posing that question. It makes it really interesting, you know, to have a discussion around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I hope everyone else enjoyed that too, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to have another talk about how to have difficult conversations with youth and get some more life skills out there.